happen.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. We still have 2 board members that we're going to join online that we haven't seen yet. So we'll go ahead and we'll have everybody that's guests in the room, go ahead and if you give us your name and unit number. And start with Mark.
Mark Feliza, Gamble Oak 723.
Brian Martinez, Lodge 337.
Scott Gillen, Gamble 79596 and 0506 here.
Rich Wills, High Point 578.
Your exhibits, Mine Hill 860.
Diana Dietrich, 840.
Okay, and then people online, if you guys would, I go ahead and give your name and what unit number.
Ben and Mandy, unit 711.
Thanks, Ben. Claudia? Or,
Hi, I just jumped in. Am I supposed to introduce myself?
yeah, if you just give us your name and unit number.
My name is Claudia Sturgis and my unit number is 343 up here in the heavens.
Thank you. Was that Wayne? It was on Wayne Alexander? He may have stepped away. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. John, I guess we can go ahead and establish we have a quorum.
Sure. Thank you, President Hughes. Yes, I can certify that a quorum is present. Also that the board members had been properly notified of the meeting. And also that the owners were notified of the meeting through an email posting on the website and the posting of the actual agenda in the lobby of the lodge 10 days prior to the meeting.
Okay, and I will state here and give to John, I did receive an email from Ron that his wife had tested positive for COVID on Tuesday, and so they were not going to be here in person. And he did say if he was not online, he gave me his proxy,
Very well.
which I just gave to John. Okay, so next thing we'll go to the approval of the
Right, the minutes of the May 27th, 2022 meeting were distributed to the board members several weeks ago, and I think they've all had a chance to review the minutes. And at this point, I would make a motion to approve those minutes.
I so moved.
Need a second?
Well, that's-
I moved, but
Second.
okay, thank you.
Any discussion? Okay, then we'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Are you voting for Ron?
And yes,
So we'll have a 6-0 vote.
yes. Okay, Stacy said the Zoom link's not opening for her. She's trying to get on her phone.
Something's wrong because other people are.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
open. It's open for me. It's easiest Zoom link I've ever had. There was no password. So do the owners get to see those minutes? Or are they on the website and you just go look for them as an owner?
Yes.
I love minutes. Okay.
Okay, and Stacy just joined. Stacy, we just voted on approving the minutes for the previous meeting. So welcome. Next thing, the first thing that I wanted to do was to, as most everyone knows, Kathy and Ron will be off the board this next time. And so I wanted to, on behalf of the board, thank them for all their service. Kathy was a very valuable resource. Over the past couple of years, we've had some personnel situations, and we were always able to go to her to consult on those, and she was very, very helpful. And Ron was the board person responsible for rules and regulations and did a lot of work with that, and we really want to thank him for that. So with that, we've had several things go on in the past quarter. Probably the two biggest things were you guys have been able to see the condition of the property. We're really getting some things done. Just about completed, for the most part, complete what we're going to get done this year up in High Point. Some of the flower beds in all the areas, trees trimmed up down at Gamble Oak. A lot of very good direction and input from the landscape committee. And we want to thank each and all of the members of the committee for the input and work that they've done. And then also recognize BHP for their contribution in the maintenance. We've heard many very good compliments on the work that they've done, and they have things running very smoothly on property. So we want to thank them also. So we will move into the reports. I'm going to change the order a little bit. We'll let Scott start off because he's got some things he's going to have to pop in and out. So while he's here and available, he's going to talk about the mortgage situation.
Yeah, I thought Andy was gonna come back, but he didn't realize he was, that this was an open board meeting. So I just told him and said, hey, it's open board meeting, you can come, you don't have to be on board meeting. But anyway, I'm gonna ask him to chime in, maybe a little later, but.
Okay.
As Joe alluded to earlier, about 3 years ago, we redid the DCCRs to try to get what we call conforming financing in the business. So Fannie Freddie eligible financing. Prior to that, all we ever had was local banks doing adjustable rate programs or balloon payments, 5-7-year balloons. So it's real hard to get financing at a reasonable rate. Fannie, everybody remembers when the Miami collapse happened, the condo collapse in Miami. Fannie really took that and retooled a lot with their condo loans. You know, obviously that collapse was because of degradation to the infrastructure, lack of maintenance to it. But Fannie went back and relooked at a lot of different things, and they made announcements around that. But they changed a lot of their guidelines. So last year in May, they updated their guidelines, and we were not considered eligible for conforming financing. We were not considered a warrantable unit. I have contacted several lenders to try to work through what changes we need to make. I thought what I would do is just maybe share with you a little bit on the guidelines and then what changes need to be made. Gary, while I'm doing that, if you can pull up the stars, go to section 15.1 also. So there we go.
Section
15.1. Okay, so I'm just going to read a couple of blurbs out of this Fannie announcement. This is called ineligible project characteristics: timeshare, fractional, segmented ownership. Projects that are managed or operated as a hotel, motel, even though the units are individually. We were aware of it. That requirement was there when we went through the changes in 2019. What we did is we made some changes to the CCRs relative to notification to Fannie or Freddie if there was damage to a property. We had to notify the lien holder. So we were tracking everybody's mortgages and where they had their financing. We also changed the concept of our front desk, who we call it security and safety desk. I forget.
service.
Yeah,
Service and security.
Service and security desk. Under the guise is the right word, but under the guise of, we have, common doors that are open all the time. We wanted to make sure somebody was there from a safety perspective. And we were able to get approved from several lenders at that point with kind of that logic. The other thing we did is one of Fannie's requirements is they require you to put 10% in reserves every year. We weren't putting 10% in reserves necessarily, but what we started doing is moving money out of the general account into reserves and then pulling it back out so that we were meeting that requirement. So probably a little smoke and mirrors, but it worked. So since then, and then, Fannie's now changed the guidelines, and even then they had very specific requirements around what they define as a condo hotel. And this property has characteristics of what they define as a condo hotel. Common phone system, common key system, front desk operations, all of those things kind of fall into what their definition of a condo hotel was. We were able to get past it. I think we may be able to get past some of those characteristics again. If we didn't, then we would have to go through things like getting rid of the Onity keys, maybe having people who have, a lot of people have their own keys today, but having one of those locks that has a code on it, something a little different. There might be some upgrades we have to do property-wise, but one thing we definitely have to change is the DCCR. So just so happens that Kai would change, we have to do an update to the CCRs anyway. But this is the clause that keeps. This is a clause that keeps causing pain. So how this reads is it says the association from time to time has the authority to contract with third parties or management companies as to the administration and management of a rental program on behalf of those owners who voluntarily, and I think we added that word, voluntarily desire to participate in the rental of their units. If there's any mandatory aspect of a rental program, mandatory aspect of having amenities like our fitness center or golf, if there's any mandatory aspects of that, that just kills you with it. The reason we have this language in here is because back in 2019, we still had Heather managing the rental program. We had Heather managing the front desk. It wasn't a rental program that was mandated or required by Tamron to the owners, but Heather was still an employee and she had a contract. So we left that language in there specific to Heather's role at that particular point in time.
Use the word employee, Heather really wasn't an employee of my contract. She was
Contractor.
She was a
Yes.
contractor.
She was paid by, she was paid by the HOA. That's the
She
material.
was paid a fee
Yeah.
to manage
She's
the
our
front
agent,
desk.
not our employee.
Correct. Find the other thing in here. Okay, if you go down a little bit where it says, the executive board may charge fees and adopt rules and regulations, policies, and procedures pertaining to the rental program, which the board in its discretion may amend from time to time. Such rules and regulations and policies and procedures may require that all unit owners utilize an exclusive rental program manager for a more efficient, uniform management and the property of the units they're on. We never did that. I don't know why we left that language in there,
I'm not sure why that's in there.
but
When I
that's the definition.
I had a realtor call me 3 weeks ago asking what she was having trouble getting a loan through, and she pointed to that language, and I looked at it, and my jaw dropped a little bit. I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah, we dropped the ball on that one. We shouldn't have left that language in there. It is what it is now. It's there. Now, what we did add is that last sentence, north-south of section 15.1 be construed to define the condominiums of Tamron as consisting of a condo hotel, or any such similar designation for lending purposes. That was kind of we're going to plug this in and hope that we can use that language when we're trying to get approval going forward. Long and short, this whole paragraph is screwing us up. We no longer have an agreement with Heather. We never had an agreement.
we do still have an agreement with Heather, but it's very limited. All it does.
I thought that was done. Okay.
No, we had one that went into effect January of this year. Didn't you
Okay.
get a copy of it? Didn't you get a copy of it?
The one I had was dated 17.
No,
5
it's,
years.
I thought that got covered, but, so let me clarify.
Okay.
So we have a current agreement with Heather, but she's not here at the property, what, ever? pretty much.
We saw her yesterday for the first time in
Yeah.
6 months.
The only compensation she gets for providing a rental program, it's her own business. The only compensation she gets is that she's allowed to exclusively use the laundry facility and the second floor housekeeping closets. That's all. We allow her to do that. That's in the agreement. She gets no monetary compensation. She used to have a cell phone. We took that away. That's all there is. Now, whether or not we want to do another agreement next year, maybe we don't. I mean, we might want to still let her use because she's been good for us and she takes care.
I don't know that that's a problem, because that's just, she's basically a tenant.
But
She's leasing some of our property.
I mean, if the board decides that, you know what, we don't ever need to consider being in the business of hiring a rental program manager, delete that whole thing.
Well, I think that's what we're gonna have to do. We have to delete this whole thing. We may have to make some other changes. So if you Google Tamron, it used to be very prevalent. You would find Tamron Vacation Rentals.
Right.
Which was Heather's old company.
Well,
Now
yeah,
now it's Premier.
Yeah.
It's not as prevalent. If you dig deep enough, you'll find it though on Google. And the problem is when a lender goes to try to approve this, or Fannie comes in and looks, they start Googling and looking that kind of stuff up. If you look at the Tamron HOA, we have this rental program, a link on the Tamron HOA page. So it appears that that's part of Tamron. So we may need to peel the onion back a bit and make some changes and make it less, not look like we have that much linkage to it.
Mhm.
If you look at TripAdvisor, it refers to this as hotel link. So there's just there's some noise online that causes us some heartburn. Now, all that being said, I do think that we can if we get rid of this particular paragraph, I do think we could probably get some lenders to approve us. I have 4 right now that are looking at it. I was going to ask Andy's. He's with Security National Mortgage. I was going to see if we can get their condo approval guys on board. The risk to the lender is if Fannie decides they don't like it, then that lender has to repurchase it. So it's a relatively easy fix just by deleting this particular paragraph. I'm hoping we wouldn't have to go so far as killing the front desk operations, the 24-hour operations, or I don't think we have to do changing all the key locks. That's not as big of a deal
no,
because
there's enough reason to keep the front desk for alarms,
Okay.
security, and making the keys, because we do have that common key system.
I'm hoping we won't have to go there. We got approved once. I think we can probably pull it off again. There's pretty big lenders that United Wholesale is one that I've got several folks talking to them. They're pretty lenient. They want to do every damn loan they can. So if we clean up that language, I think they'll be able to get financing back.
I mean, the fact that we might consider doing another contract for Heather just so she can use those, because I think we wanted to be able to do that, right? Be able to use those housekeeping facilities
Yep.
and laundry. That can go under the 15.2 covers service contracts.
Yep.
Can be in there.
Yeah, and the other recommendation I'd make as it relates to this is a pretty minor change, but we have to go through the vote process to get it done.
Yes.
We have to do the same thing for the Kiowa change that has to be done. One of the things that we talked about with Chris when we went through the last change was adding language in our CCRs that allow the board to make minor changes without a vote. Just to stay in compliance with regulatory requirements. We can come up with that language. We may want to look at that.
Well, that'd be
This
nice.
This is silly what we have to go through
It is.
to get rid of a paragraph that doesn't make any sense anymore. It doesn't apply to us anymore. And this, the Kiowa changes, why do we need to have a vote for something that we're just being compliant with regulation that the state of Colorado? That doesn't make any sense. So
Has that discussion been had with?
we talked to her back in
Chris?
19 about it. Yeah.
What did she say then? Did she say that was,
She said it was
Possibility.
feasible then. Yeah.
that we should look at that?
She said this potential amendments to the
Yeah,
DCCR.
sale of association units, that's another one.
Yeah, I was gonna
It would be section 5.7.
Well, we should cover all of those things if we're gonna do that.
So anyway, if anybody have questions about that? I know it's causing heartburn for people, and I know that people that are trying to sell and they're, buyers and getting financing, but
Just an opposite. And all this is great. I'm on board. I would suggest the board, you might also reach out to one or two of the local banks. We're a fairly big customer in town. They may want to make some loans here and hold on to that thing. There is no reason why we should exclude banks as a potential source of mortgage.
certainly talk to them. They never
I
had
don't
one.
think we've done that.
I mean, right now, in the 6.75% interest rate environment, they may want to do
They
that on their
want it,
books. 3 years ago, there was no way they wanted that thing on their books for 30 years.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, even. I did it once upon a time with a bank here in town. It worked fine.
Yeah, it certainly can.
They're still here. So. I mean, concept is great. Helping new owners find financing is great. Doing what we need to do with Fannie and Freddie is great. There's another window as well, particularly while we're maybe causing a bit work.
Yeah.
There will be some hurdles to cross.
Yeah, that might be something we bring in. She knows the lenders in town. And we can certainly talk to our banking relationships.
Former board member too. Something about banking.
Yeah, we can work into it. All right, any questions?
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Thanks for letting me go first, I appreciate it.
The other thing, Mark is gonna have to leave. Well, we can go ahead and we can knock that out. So we'll let Mark talk about landscape.
So a year ago, about now, I approached Rick and we about a year ago, is that better? Yeah, I turned it up. About a year ago, I approached Rick and we sort of kicked off the landscaping effort again here at Tameron. And I agreed to lead that effort. We've met over the past year. I just wanted to acknowledge the members of our committee. We've got a good group. We've got Dottie, Trish. Trish has stepped off, and actually Mandy has stepped on here over the past month. And Mandy, just as a matter of background, she essentially runs a sustainable agriculture program at James Ranch. So she is going to be a great asset. We have Lynette. We have an owner from essentially every cluster or complex. We have Lynette from Pinecone, Dottie is Gamble Oak, and Mandy's Gamble Oak, Rich is High Point, Tad is the Lodge, and Margaret is at High Point. So we've got good representation across the board. At management, Elisa and Paige have been stalwarts. They've attended all of our meetings and been great. Staff has just been great. Anthony and Ryan have worked hard. Greg has been with us all along. And I especially want to thank Gary. Gary has coordinated all of our Zooms and everything, all of our meetings throughout the year. And Rick, I guess you could say, has been more than supportive. Rick has gone on tours, he's been at meetings, and I think he's really dug into this, and then we couldn't do it without the support of Rick and the board in general. So we had 9 meetings this past year. We've had a lot of presentations, and I'll say that it's been an educational year. We've had presentations from a bunch of folks. We've had Matt with Deep Roots. He's a tree service company that's been used for years here at Tameron to talk really about wildfire defense. Ben Bain, the La Plata weed manager, has been here and presented to us, and he's prepared a weed plan for Tameron that will be incorporated into some of our work moving forward. Different chemicals, safer chemicals. Maybe we won't have to put up as many signs saying watch your dog when we do weed treatment. We've worked with Glacier. Jim Goodman and Kelsey O'Brien has talked to us about their wildfire management plan. We'll talk about wildfire management more in a minute. They've got quite an impressive program that's a yearly piece of work that they budget a considerable amount of money to do for wildfire mitigation. Darren, our CSU extension agent, has gave us a presentation last month with some very interesting info on what's happened to the climate in Durango and Tamaron over the past 100 years and where it's heading in terms of our climate change. And
Meetings recorded.
the minutes are provided, but, and some of them may be recorded, but we do detailed minutes and their the minutes and the agendas are all forwarded to John on a monthly basis. We've done a number of consults and tours. We've been down to the tax office. We've gotten some plats and things to give better info on boundaries, because that was a question that came up, especially in dealing with Glacier. We've got to be sure as we do work that we don't step onto Glacier property. We've already had a notice from them that to watch that. We've worked with the Soil Service. They did a custom soils report for Tamaron, so we have that information for moving forward with gardening. We've had on-property tours with Steve Underwood. Steve is a forestry expert for wildfire mitigation, and he has walked the property and given us a lot of good advice, and we'll be working with Steve down the road. And we've also taken tours of Glacier's properties and looked at their wildfire work. Rick was involved in that. I think that the big takeaway from that work was we can make our property safe, but we don't have to make it look bad. We can preserve our trees, but make our structures safe at the same time. So we worked throughout the year. We had a bunch of meetings, and this week, we spent a long time as a committee doing our lessons learned. And we guided our lessons learned based on our priorities that are listed in the plan that was provided to the board in the spring. Appearance, safety, safety to structures, costs, of course, productivity of staff, water conservation, suitable planning and training. Shrink that down. So the highlights, and I'm going to put right on the top of the list, the fire hazard potential, that has become very apparent. We've had experts come in. I guess the word is looking around. There are places with experts just say are non-compliant. I won't define non-compliant in 5 minutes, but we've got areas that are troublesome and mitigation in areas is urgent. Water is important. Water is the next topic that just comes to the top of every meeting. The staff will be looking at sprinklers. We'll be doing upgrading as necessary. There's a lot of detail to this. And if anybody's interested in the multiple page lessons learned work that we did this past week, I'll provide it. Today, I'm going to try to keep it to about a minute. Gamble Oak will receive the treatment that High Point received last year. This year, all plantings will be chosen for aesthetic appeal, low maintenance, low water needs, and adaptive to native situations. An example is look around the mine shaft and look at the landscaping treatment that's on there. We like rocks. I'm a geologist. I've studied rocks all my life, but Rick likes rocks. Rocks require low maintenance or no maintenance, and we will be planning to put large boulders in places for landscape design to discourage parking on the grass. And that will be all part of a process where we plan to places like that. Boulders. BHP's got equipment here after the spring thaw where they can, the boulders are free, the cost is moving. And BHP has the equipment to do that. We're going to begin more planning on it, and I say a 5-year plan, but a multi-year plan where we replace grass with rock. A good example of this type of design would be up at High Point on the way into the Peregrine Gate. You can see how they've replaced all of their grass there with rock and mulch. It's quite attractive, and it requires no water, and it's low maintenance. maintenance. And then there's a long list of improvements, multiple page list of improvements that Ryan was here with us and we need, and it can be managed by staff. The question is going to be, is there currently enough staff to manage that standard of care? And that's something that we'll be working on here over the course of the next month. And then we'll continue to educate ourselves. We will have speakers with sustainable agriculture, sustainable plantings, water-wise approaches. Our view is that water is our most precious commodity. And someday, maybe someday may not be for a few years, maybe not. Well, some of us are in this room, but someday the answer is going to be, sorry, there is no more water. And are we prepared for that when that day comes? Better to be prepared in advance than say, uh-oh, Houston, we've got a problem. There's no more water. What are we going to do about all this grass? So that is the highlights, the lesson learned, Gary. So the next steps, over the course of the next month, we're going to put numbers on some of our ideas. And once we have those numbers scienced at the October meeting, we will prioritize, knowing that there's only so much money available. We will prioritize according to cost and urgency, and that will be presented to the board for the November budgetary work. And with that, if there's any questions.
Mark, would you kind of slowly go through the membership of your committee again?
Well,
You're the
can I give you that first, go up to that first slide?
okay. Well, am I going to get that?
Did you get that?
I think it would be appropriate at this point for the board to have a motion to approve the membership of this committee. I'll make that motion.
I will second that.
Do you have a mission statement for the committee?
We do.
They do.
The mission statement is on the website. We have our plans.
Question is,
Gary, you go to the website and pull up our missions.
Was that on the agenda? The mission statement?
We can put it on the next meeting.
Or you could do it right there. Unless there are questions in the minds of the board members.
No. Okay, I will make a motion that we accept the mission statement of the landscape committee as presented.
Well, you have a motion on the floor. Sorry. But let's go ahead and
Okay,
vote on the membership.
okay, so is there any further discussion on approval of the committee members? Okay, then all in favor of approving the committee members? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, voting in the affirmative for Ron. 7-0.
Very well.
Passed. Okay, then I will again make my motion to accept the mission statement presented by the landscape committee.
I'll second that. Is that Gary? Great. Second.
Okay, any discussion from the board?
There's, I'm trying to be housekeeping here. You don't have fire mitigation on there. That takes out off of this plate. Is that really what you intend to do with your motion? It's your call. I'm just trying to make sure that we're lined up and they have the authority to do the work you expect them to do. Fire mitigation.
It's grounds.
I mean, I think the team needs to have some guidelines as well. They need to know if there's.
I think fire mitigation should be a completely separate issue. It's not, it can be a part of landscaping, but it's not it's not their mission. They weren't formed to specifically address fire mitigation. I think that would be, I mean, it works with it, but
Where the two dovetailed is initially, if we look back last year, we had a lot of low-lying branches. We had a lot of it. And, we had contractors come in to do trimming. Those contractors also do fire mitigation. And, it became very apparent that by doing fire mitigation, you would have done the trimming.
Yeah.
There's an aesthetic
Correct
element.
me.
in it.
I'm sorry, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that the fire mitigation is in the plan.
Fire mitigation is in our
It
plan
is
and
in
our
our
mission can
plan
be
that was
adjusted.
approved by the board.
Well, this is a good point. It's the first time it's been addressed and we can certainly make
Yeah.
it.
And so, and this is in the plan as well, and it was approved by.
Back until a moment ago, you didn't even have committee. No. Approved by the board.
Official.
No, I'm just, again, I'm trying to get you guys authority to do the work you need to do. You could argue that you guys can spend your money without the authorization. Standing board committee. Make that argument.
Plus we have to spend any money.
We don't spend it. We only bring suggestions to the board.
The issue then is that fire mitigation is not mentioned in the mission statement. Is that the issue?
that was the issue Eric brought up.
Well, do one of two things. We can approve the mission statement as is and do something about fire mitigation otherwise or later. Or you could, I presume, amend the mission statement to include it, whatever.
My recommendation would be to put in a very simple modification to the mission statement that says that fire threat mitigation has to be an important consideration.
Well, the board should, certainly the dollars that will come with it will have to be a board approved item. The landscape committee has the eyes that identify the problem. That, and it was very apparent to us from the very beginning, we were talking to experts, we identified the problem, so I think it needs to be part and parcel. The eyes need to be the committee, and of course, any work that has to be done to fix it, and it'll be dollars, will have to be approved by the board. So
Okay.
I think that's an additional sentence to this is what fixes it. You just delay any approval of the mission statement.
I'll go ahead and withdraw the proposal. For the motion for the,
We can amend it later.
Well,
okay.
I would
I
like,
think it's already been approved when our plan is approved, because that's part of the plan.
well, let's go ahead. My opinion, let's go ahead and approve the current mission statement. Then we'll change it later if we have to.
Okay, then I do not withdraw my motion.
Motion's on the floor.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Affirmative for Ron. Passes 7-0.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mark and Rich and everybody that's been a part of the committee. You guys have done a lot of tremendous work. Greg's been supporting them. Okay. Okay, we will go ahead and get back on track with the agenda. The next thing would be the architectural review. First item, there was a request from unit 762 to add some windows. Those were the ones I sent all emails and pictures to all the board members. And there was one that was a little bit different from what we've approved in the past. But I did, myself and Gary both made attempts to contact the owner next door, and that owner never responded to us. And in my last email to him, I said, if we do not hear from you, we will take your non-response as acceptance. So I make a request that we approve the windows requested. They are both upper windows. It's for unit 762 in Gamble Oak. And there's windows on both the east and west side of the unit. Everyone's seen the pictures. Here's a copy for John for the record.
Rick,
Yes,
I have a question. So when you contacted the next door unit and didn't hear back and said, we'll take, you know, a non-response as affirmative, what period of time was that we allowed them? I'm just thinking if I'm on vacation out of the country, I might not check my emails for a week, or did we give them sufficient notification, or do we know them to have been in town and gotten that communication?
I gave him 1 month.
Okay,
I had previously received an email from him.
okay. That's good. I think that's
He's
reasonable.
Been in communication with him also.
Okay, thanks.
And that unit is on the market, it's under contract.
Okay. Okay, so.
Excuse me, I have just one question. You had mentioned you thought one of these windows was
What it
different.
does is it looks out not on the unit, but on the front deck. Or it doesn't look out, it is up above, is the one that is, however tall that is. That one trapezoidal window right there. That, yeah. It goes out onto the front. It would face the front deck of the unit next to it.
And these, otherwise, these,
The one on the other side looks out,
but
there's
there's,
an end unit.
it has, I presume the board has approved similar windows in the past. Is that a true statement?
Not to my knowledge, but in the communications and emails, there was no one opposed to it.
John, when you say previous ones, nothing like this before, certainly there have been a lot of windows installed.
Yes.
The issue that's different here is that it overlooks.
Yeah, it is up at the roof line over the deck, front deck next door. You would have to get on an extension ladder and climb up there to be able to look out that window.
And do we still require owners to sign the document that says they understand that they are responsible for any maintenance thereafter?
I knew that used to be handled through maintenance. I have not done that personally.
Do we know?
It hasn't been done
It is,
for about a year and a half. They've
it
always did it,
is-
but we can't do it.
whenever I receive a request, that is the very first thing that I inform the owner of.
And it is in the DCC.
Yeah.
Doesn't say that much, you would have to have it written.
What? Okay, why did we do that then?
But
Just to make sure that they were cognizant of it and maybe not having read the
missed the question.
DCCRs.
I'm understanding now that the responsibility for maintenance of a board-approved alteration of the exterior, be it window or whatever else, that it's in the DCCRs, that will become the responsibility of that owner and subsequent owners. True statement?
personally, I don't know if it's in the DCCRs, but that is in that statement that or that form that we have them fill out and sign. It is in that.
But we have neglected to do that for the past.
Since Dave left.
Well,
Maybe we can reinstitute that.
and you mentioned this is on the market. So this owner is going to understand that he's responsible for future maintenance and then sell it.
No,
No,
this
not
unit
this
isn't on the
unit,
market.
the
It's-
Oh,
unit
okay.
next door is on the
Well,
market.
this unit will eventually be sold.
Yeah.
And again, we need to make sure people understand that when they buy a unit that has features to it that have been added, that they take the financial responsibility on for any future maintenance to those features.
Which is no change to our past practice forever.
I think the document where people sign and say they understand that is valuable. And I would recommend that if we didn't do that in the past, we should start doing it again, and we probably need to go back and cover our tracks, so to speak, with all the alterations that have been done and refer them to the part of the DCCRs.
So let me ask, what is the procedure by which owners get, they can be notified that the board has approved their request for changes, right? So at that point, with that approval, should we give them this statement that where they have to agree to any future maintenance of that modified?
That's what we had done in the past.
I think that's perfectly reasonable if it's not going to be a hassle to do.
Clarification, section 9.1 of the DCRs does state
That's
that,
what I thought.
and you can reference that with this
Yeah.
notice.
Yeah.
You can reference that.
My question would be with this notice, okay, I have a unit, did all kinds of fancy work to it.
Yeah.
I sell that unit and it goes to you. I'm the one that signed that document.
Right.
How do you know I have that document? You sell it to Jerry, so it could go around the room 10 times.
Sure.
So where's this document gonna, where is that gonna be housed? So that anybody would know that the information has been passed along. That would be my question. It's gonna be
Yeah.
if it's in here,
Well, listen to this wording, because this doesn't say that it says, finally, each unit owner shall be responsible for the maintenance, repair, replacement of any improvements or additions to a unit that have been approved by the executive board, including, but not limited to, windows, chimneys, doors, and other roof penetrations. It says the unit owner. It doesn't say the unit owner who had the work done. It says the unit owner.
I just don't know how we keep track.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, theoretically, all those forms that get signed get scanned. I've got a bunch of them in my computer now. We haven't had that for a year and a half. And then the paper copies get filed away either with a scope of work or something like that. Now, Dave had a file with all of that stuff in it. I don't know where that file is now.
I think Joe points out that the board is covered, so to speak, by the DC. Because when you buy your unit, no matter when you do it, you agree to the documents. So if it ever came to that, the board could point to the DCCR and say, no, you're repairing that because you agreed to that. I think it's just a courtesy.
Yeah.
To let the owner who's asking for the changes or the alteration, it's a courtesy to say, you do understand that it would be nice that courtesy were extended to the next buyer, but you're right, this gets very complicated.
It can get lost.
It can get lost over time. Okay.
And it has been, even though it wasn't signed, it has been communicated to the owners.
I
As
think the
far
DCCR
as what's happened
Yeah.
beyond me, I don't know.
When a new
But
owner,
as far as when someone has requested it and it's come through me, the owner has been specifically told.
the new owner acknowledges at closing that they have received, it may be read, that's an assumption, but they have received and acknowledge
They agree to.
all this stuff.
Eric,
I was gonna bring this up under new business, but since this is what we're talking about. Joe, I hear what you're saying and you're exactly right, but just to give you one specific example, my next door neighbor, we're talking about $8,000 plus to replace one that's already broken. It's been amended. He signed the document. He had no idea. So I think as a board, you might want to think about new owner relations. That's a pretty nasty surprise. He's been in his unit about 6 months and he's looking at an $8,000+ so.
Was
I
the
thought-
unit, was the window broken when he bought it?
No, it broken just the summer. Just right.
But it's an added window.
It is not an added window. Somebody added a third pane. The original window, the two panes are unmodified. They have not been modified. Somebody put up a third pane, I assume with some kind of screening on it, some to block down some of the direct sun. Because you can look at his and it's much darker than mine is, for example. It hasn't been altered. The thought was, maybe this is a new business. I'm wondering if we can ask as part of the inspection process on new purchases, that it make known somehow either through the inspection process, this window has been altered, this window has been replaced. Because, I mean, I don't think anybody here even keeps a record. How would you know with confidence that a window has been replaced 25 years ago when you get it?
Sure,
As
well,
opposed to it being a new,
clearly,
original.
this is something that I think should be maintained here at Taco by what Gary was saying, or what Dave Dunn had done previously. And there should be a file for each unit on property that has any and all of these kinds of modifications that have been done. So that when a new buyer buys a unit, that file can be examined and advise them of any obligations that they're going to be responsible for.
I think also that, that the owner is required to fill out an owner's disclosure form about the property in detail. And, I would just caution the board to, against taking any formal role in disclosures, because we're setting ourselves up, I think, liability wise. And if we're asked by the buyer, if the buyer's real estate agent tells the sellers, we are interested in finding out from the maintenance office what work has been done on that unit, then the seller can go to Gary and ask if there's a record. But I would caution us against telling owners that we have a file, because that really is making us accountable for correct reporting on everything. We'd have to be careful how we worded that. We might not hear about everything that's replaced. We're supposed to, but we might not. And so I would just approach that with caution and try to leave that between the seller and the buyer unless specifically requested.
This is a larger issue than the approval of this particular alteration, and it probably should be on a future agenda.
That would be my recommendation.
In the meantime, let's start getting our records updated as far as all changes that have been approved and done.
And along the lines of what Stacy brought up, perhaps even consult with our counsel, see about these issues, potential liability or whatever. Yeah, I think we need to address it in the future.
Okay, we'll take the vote on the motion before us for the windows. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Got it.
Okay. The second one is for, we sent out an email. We talked about this last meeting. Storm doors up in High Point and other owners that wish to purchase them. I did get some pricing from Home Depot for, it is Anderson model 3000. It is their top of the line model. Their most popular seller. I also did then call, if you Google or do a search for storm doors in Durango, it gives you about 4 companies. The other companies are all actually just door companies. They don't do storm doors. There also is a listing for Anderson. I called that. that goes to their national office, and the national office says they sell the storm door as a package to the full door entry system. So this is the pricing. It's the only thing local that I was able to easily find without traveling around to a bunch of hardware stores.
You might want to look at the doors, the storm doors we put in when we remodeled Pinecone. I don't know if they're those or something else.
These are exactly like the ones that you guys
Are
put
they
in.
the
Yes.
same model or same company? I don't know.
I don't know if it's the same model of company, but they're exactly like them. The door comes down.
The
and has a
window
screen.
slides down and the screen comes down with it.
Yes, yes, yes. And it'll be solely voluntary to any owner who wishes to purchase. As of last time I asked Gary, there were 13 owners who were interested in purchasing these. So
Cost per
it would, without a volume discount, it'd be about $700 installed. 2 years
Not bad.
ago, it was gonna be around 525 installed. So price has gone up, and what they'll have to do is they have an installer comes out, measures each door opening individually, make sure that it's uniform, the doors will fit, and then his cost is applied to the cost of the door.
Home Depot.
Rick? Was there any kind of supply chain delay? Did they feel confident that they could have a smooth timing on delivery of a group of doors? And I know that windows are one of the problems for some of the people I know remodeling in Durango area, that their windows took forever to get here. So I was just curious if they commented on availability of 13 doors.
It would be a custom order. They said 8 to 10 weeks.
Okay.
And
I guess that work can be done in the winter because it's covered.
Yeah.
You know,
I spoke to 2 different people, and neither one indicated any supply chain issues.
okay, thanks.
I'll pass this around. You guys can look at it.
Is it going, are we asking for a board action?
Last time when I brought it up, you said there needed to be a board action.
Then we should, so you're suggesting this
So I'm
is the
bringing-
alternative.
I'm bringing the specific door to the board
Okay.
for approval.
And it's
Because that was
exclusively,
what I was advised to do.
exclusively High Point?
No.
This could be done
This could
anywhere.
be, yeah.
Okay.
And it is the exact door that is on Mark Police's unit.
So this could be applied to any of these. This could be
Yes.
Pinecone as well.
Yes.
There were owners that didn't opt to get
Yes.
the
And the
the
email,
doors that we got at Pinecone.
yeah,
too.
the email was not sent exclusively to High Point.
Can someone hold up the pictures to the camera? I wish I were there. I really do. Especially looking at the background behind you. I really wish I were there. Okay, great. Thank you, whoever that is.
Oh, Brian. you
No
did that
way,
well.
Brian, yeah.
We are hiring, Brian.
All right, great. Yeah, thank you.
You're gonna put a screen door on your unit, Brian?
We probably need that.
Yeah, that needs to go to John.
We need to see that. We're gonna vote on this.
So I will make a motion that the board approve that door for installation for any owners in the outlying clusters who wish to purchase one.
I second it.
Any further discussion?
I have a question. this is gonna be an added on door, who is responsible for its maintenance? You know, a door closure mechanism breaks, the screen gets torn, the window gets broken. Who is gonna be responsible for that?
The individual owner will.
Okay. I think that's clear.
That is the right
It
answer.
is their choice. And if I have a problem with mine, I will take care of it.
Also in here, and I won't go and look for it and quote it,
Uh-huh.
but when it talks about common elements and windows and doors being common elements, screen doors are not included.
Okay.
So if you know, when you tear a screen, it's owner's responsibility.
So,
That goes for the doors that are already in place, the storm doors that people already have in in Gamble and Pinecone.
Yeah.
Same principle.
Those were optional in the remodels, so. it does qualify.
okay, then, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Ron? Anyone opposed? Okay. That motion passes. Okay, Ron's not on, and the only thing I would say right now, for the board, we do have an owner, if you were present here for the new owners meeting, who came up about dogs. We have an owner who rented out his unit without notifying Cameron of it. His renter brought a dog, so we issued that owner a fine for
You're saying
his renter.
that must have been before I came in. So
Yes.
you're saying he didn't know,
He didn't know.
notice renters or his rental management company or whoever.
No
that
one,
dogs
yeah,
weren't
no
allowed.
one notified Cameron that he even had a renter on property.
We showed the units.
A long-term renter?
No,
Sure.
short-term renter. And the renter brought a
How
dog.
did he get a key?
Exactly.
What we think is the case is that the Onity lock was disabled and he hands out a deadbolt.
Deadbolt lock key. Was this in High Point?
That was Gamble.
No.
And he was contacted, he was emailed, and he never responded. So
And the Onity lock has been enabled.
the Onity lock has now been enabled.
They have to come to front desk.
Anybody going in there has to go to the front desk.
So that owner has been fined. And that's really about the only thing we have pending right now as far as rules and regulations. I guess next we can go to the financial report.
I heard that.
You heard that, huh? Yeah. Let's see.
And then after this report, we'll go ahead and take a break.
Okay, so this report is for through August of this year. So is that 8 months? Yeah, so 8 months into the year. This is the balance sheet. This is a snapshot of our financial position at the moment. Under current assets, we have all our money that's in the bank totaling just under $2 million. 783,000 of that is accounts 103, 107, and 108, which is our reserves fund. And the rest of it is accounts in various, and those are 3 different accounts at 3 different banks. And then our operating money, including our capital projects money, is held with Alpine Bank here in town. So we're in good shape. I hate to use the term flush with cash, but we're looking pretty good there.
Okay, when do our CDs renew?
Counts,
November?
Who's talking?
Our CDs.
Scott's got a question.
The first internet, yeah, when do those renew? We should see if they get-
I can't hear you.
He wants to know when the CDs were due.
They're the laddered CDs and most of them are 2-year CDs now
Right.
because when we first took out those accounts in those banks, we took out 6-month, 12-month, 18-month and 24-month CDs so that the renewals would stagger.
So Joe, are you getting notifications? If they're coming up for maturity?
Yeah, we do get those
'Cause I
notifications.
don't remember ever getting any of those before.
Lisa gets them.
Yes, good.
And we, Lisa, we're looking at those accounts constantly online. Especially the accounts 107 and 108, the internet banks. The good news is right now that interest rates are going up. So as we've got some of those accounts, even the 2-year ones that are at what, 0.5% or 0.75%. Whereas when we first started doing this years ago, we were getting 2 to 2.5%. Well, now the trend is going back the other way. So our interest on those accounts, our returns on those accounts should start creeping up again. Accounts receivable, that 132, that 51,000 is mostly money that owners owe on their individual HOA accounts. Moving down into, and the rest of that is our fixed assets. Moving down into liabilities and equity. I often get asked what account 240 is. That's the deferred revenue account. That amount fluctuates through the year. At the beginning, starting next month, that'll be about $600,000 because that'll reflect the assessment amount that Elisa just billed to everyone. And so that what you're looking at there, that 188,000, that represents the month of September's. So we allocate on a monthly basis the assets for the billed revenues for assessment.
By quarter.
Yeah, the quarterly amounts, yeah. So each quarter it jumps up and then it decrements down until the next quarter. The last thing I would point out on is that at the bottom there, keep going, Gary. Yeah, okay, so equity, accounts 320 and 321. This is our reserve fund balance is 321. You'll notice that it doesn't exactly equal the reserves total that I just stated that's in the bank. And when we get to the cash flow statements, I'll explain why that is. And then account 320 is help me out again. This is the accumulation since the birth of Taco of all the profits and loss, not profits, excess.
Assets and liabilities.
Yeah.
Since Taco.
So this is basically the total of these two lines, which is about just under $2 million, is the HOA's equity in our ownership. Not to be confused with your ownership, your equity in your own units. That adds to that. Okay. So all in all, our balance sheet looks pretty good. Next page, Gary. Okay, we're gonna have to shrink that down a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So I'll go over I'll highlight a few items on this income statement. It's pretty lengthy, obviously. The first section is all of our income streams. You'll see, can you bring that down just a hair, Gary, so I can see the heading? Down, yeah, there. Okay, so there's 3 columns on this. The column on the far right is our annual budget. This matches up with what we budgeted last year and for 2022. The year-to-date budget, the middle column represents 8 months of that. You know, a lot of times we don't spend consistently throughout the year. So sometimes that number isn't a good representation, but it is what it is. it's 8 months of the year-to-date budget, so we can compare that to the 8 months of actual spending, which is, or income or spending, which is the column on the left. So I won't address anything that's right in line. No need to. Account 404 looks quite low. There's a couple reasons for that. When we had a change in our maintenance department back in May, we had to get our staff and BHP in line on how work orders were going to be billed and how they were going to be generated and tracked and so forth. And I was in Gary's office the other day and he said, anything I can do to get a break from this billing and this billing I'm doing right now, which is about 3 months backlog. Is that about right? Yeah. So there's a backlog in the billing that'll catch up. Also, Gary informed me that we were talking just recently about screen doors about supply chain issues. We have owners who need these air conditioning units. We call them PTACs. We ordered 6 of them, 6, right?
6 on March 9th.
6 of them on March 9th. They just came in. And so we haven't paid for them yet. So, and that would, the income from those, when we sell them to the owners, would be on this line. And so that's why this will all catch up. That should get pretty normalized by the time we do the year end financial reports. Commercial space rental, you might just wonder what that is. That's the lady that does the rent space from us to do hairdressing. And also we rent the space that Sotheby's real estate offices in. Why are we behind on that, Sue? I mean, Lisa, what's the?
They pay 2 quarters at a time.
Okay,
So they owe us for the.
They owe us
the
2 quarters.
Third and fourth quarter.
Yeah. Okay. So that'll catch up as well. That's going to be a familiar refrain on this. A lot of these things, like I said, you can't always compare the actual income or spending to that middle line because it doesn't flow equally throughout the year. Service and collection fees, that looks like a lot. That's a billed amount, not a collected amount. And this is all things like interest and late fees on accounts and fines and things like that. Transfer fees, this is the amount that we collect when a new unit sells to a new owner. And the rest of that is pretty well in line. Laundry is down. I don't know why. Probably weren't washing the clothes as much. Yeah. Anyway, we're slightly down on the income line, and again, most of that is due to the backlog in account 404, and it'll catch up. Now we get to expenses. Administrative expenses, account 501 insurance is a little bit down. That's because we pay for our umbrella liability in one shot in the fall, and we just got the bill, so that'll pretty much equal out. Going down a little bit. Audit and consulting fees, we just had the audit completed. It'll be reported on tomorrow at the annual owners meeting. And have we got the bill on that? Okay.
And it's 8,000.
And it's $8,000. So that's gonna equal out. Annual meeting, we're having that this week. So all the bills and expenses for that, the party tonight and everything else will be added in probably next month. Marketing and promotions, we're overspending. We had budgeted last year that we weren't going to use the services of an outside internet presence provider. That was Ann Dixon. That's being done in-house now by Paige. But I guess in the negotiations on that, we agreed to pay her for a quarter, which was $500 a month, so $1,500. So that's why that's overspent. Administrative salaries, 590. This is Gary and Elisa and Paige. That's their salaries. Employee benefits is a little high. That's because we prepaid a lot of our health
That,
insurance for
that
the,
number is covers September's,
and it's
bill.
covers September's bills.
so
well.
that evens out as well.
Yeah. That's that prepaid. We talked about workman's comp. Are we paid in full on that at this point? Did you look at that?
No, I just got another bill.
Okay. So any reason why we're a little high on the work comp?
If you look at the work comp in the 600 accounts, that's where all the credits went.
Mhm.
So that needs some adjustment. It's making it look like the admin is the full expense of the workers' comp. And
So we're gonna do
we're
some
at a lower
journal
rate.
entries.
Yeah, we're at a lower rate
Okay.
because we're
Yeah, you guys
we're
don't,
just on
you're not high
paper
risk.
cuts, and
Yeah, you don't got paper cuts. Okay.
so that needs to be worked.
Okay, so that'll get adjusted before we do here. 600 operations. This is all of our various maintenance items. I point out right up front that all of these accounts do not include any in-house labor. So all of these accounts are for the most part parts, supplies, services that we purchase outside, contractors, things like that. Our labor is in another category that you'll see later on.
So John, that includes BHP, right?
No, BHP is later.
Separate.
Yeah. And that may change next year, but because we brought BHP on in May and I'll explain all this, but we may put BHP's costs in these categories instead of where it is now in payroll. The reason it's in payroll now is because we had this budget for payroll that we're not spending.
Right.
So instead of blowing up one budget to the benefit of another, we decided to put it over there. Snow removal. Got to really take a hard look at it when we budget this year on snow removal. We've blown up this budget, I think, 2 to 3 years running now. So we're probably going to have to put more money against it up front.
In the forecast for January is extremely snowy.
A lot of snow. What about December? That's what's going to go against this.
Now,
I mean, this isn't as bad as
Towards-
last
yeah.
year. What was it last year? 130,000? Total?
the next 3 months are supposed to be above normal temperatures, below normal precipitation. Then December into January, extremely snowy and extremely cold.
So which farmer's almanac did you consult for that information?
The farmers on that. Yeah,
Oh,
they're
the
not the
old-
old, yeah, not the old farmers, the farmers on that.
We budgeted 32,000 for grounds. We're underspending that. I think some of that probably can be attributed to the work that's being done in High Point. It's not grounds work, it's landscape improvements, and that's covered on the capital page. So
We
just
also
underspending
haven't had to hire specialists because we've got these guys.
because BHP
doing
is
the-
doing it, yeah. So there's that too. The exterior maintenance, I'm sure you're all familiar, we did these exterior maintenance projects, capital projects over the last 15 years, and the buildings look real good. And the reason they keep looking good is because we allocate money every year to refresh the stain, the paint on these buildings. And instead of letting them go, instead of just doing it and then letting it deteriorate and catching it up 8 or 10 years later, we do it every year. So that's why these buildings look so good. It costs some money, and we typically do most of this in late summer into the fall. So they're working on it now. The group is working on it now, and they'll finish all that up pretty much by the end of November before the snow starts really falling.
you'll see down at Gamble Oak, we're changing the color of the paint a little bit. It's lighter color, looks really well.
640 fire sprinklers and extinguishers. That's we're gonna end up spending that money and probably more, right? Because we've got the backflows. All of our water supply circuits have backflow preventers on them, and they have to be certified that they're working properly every year. What we got, about 47 of them? Yeah. And that's all happening now, or will be happening, right? Yeah,
So do they inspect each one or they take? a sample?
everyone.
Everyone.
You got to do everyone. Yep. Glacier would be all over us if we didn't, because it's
Oh,
their
yeah.
system that's at risk.
Yeah.
If the backflow preventers don't work. All right, next page, Gary. The first line up there is the lodge exterior maintenance. That goes with the other three areas. Before. Pretty much everything in that category is in line. Fogged windows. This is where the original windows in the units, the 2-pane windows with an evacuated space in between, where the seals break down and get moisture in there and they fog up. And that is an HOA responsibility. It's original windows. So we fix those as we can. I mean, we budgeted an amount of money each year, and then fill it until we finish spending that money, and then next year we start over again.
Another question on that, Joe. Those windows, are they being replaced with the same windows that they were before? Or is there new technology or new technique?
Question needs to go over there.
Yeah, okay, that would reduce the likelihood that those windows would fog.
I don't specifically know the answer to that. Durango Glass has been doing most of this. Animus Glass is going to be doing some of it. I don't know that there's greater technology to keep the seals from failing.
I don't think the technology is bad. I've got a bunch of these windows in my unit. I've never had a problem with mine. I think it's just a matter of windows that are, in the sun, maybe the ones that get a lot of sun, the seals dry out on them quicker.
Right.
Oh,
Because this is, to a very large extent, this is a problem in the S units, particularly in Gamble Oak, because Gamble Oak has more exposure to some, but the S units are, or any of the higher up windows are.
so it must be sun exposure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would add to this, because this number looks low, part of the problem is included in the fog windows are certain broken windows. And that is the issue that we're having right now. We've got a broken window that is going to be fixed under this budget. And that is going to be a $6,100 expense. We had another one in
So a
Pinecone
third of the budget.
another one in Pinecone that was just replaced, and that was $3,200. So between those two windows and the one that we had done, that was in Pinecone also, that was a broken window. So in broken windows, we've got close to $11,000 already spent out of an $18,000 budget. And that's why I know that there are people who are upset because their fog windows haven't been replaced. But this is one of the problems we've had, is trying to decipher, trying to discern who is going to be responsible for certain broken windows. And right now, Taco is footing the bill for $11,000.
The broken windows, were they due to environmental reasons, or was some kid hit a ball through the window?
For the most part, they're environmental reasons. The broken window in Pinecone that we talked about earlier, though, had a third pane that was added to it, so the window was altered. So since we assume this is some sort of environmental thing, adding a third pane changes the thermal characteristics of the window, and so Taco is not going to be responsible for that. But when you have a cracked window that is just the original double pane, that's gonna be a Taco responsibility.
Automatically?
Unless we can determine otherwise.
I mean,
Unless
if it's an outside pain, you could probably guess, you could probably say the owner didn't have any responsibility.
Right.
for it.
If
If
it's
it's
an
an inside pain,
we look for impact points. And if Durango Glass or Animus Glass or whoever can determine, yeah, there's an impact point, it was hit with something, and it's an interior pain, that's gonna be on the owner.
okay. All right, thanks, Gary.
Joe, sorry. To answer your question, Jerry, I think the only technology change is that we are now putting in a tinted paint, whereas the original was just plain glass.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
Yeah. So
Do
you
you,
can tell a
the
new-
original ones don't have a bronze tint to them?
I don't know if the original ones did, but the new ones do.
Yes.
Do they look different when you look up and see them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Least observant person.
See no evil, Gary?
So Gary, don't these cost like $12,000 or something right around that to replace the whole? Like one of those things?
An owner is, in fact, I think Kathy Sturgis, who is on right now, I think she's paying $10,000 to have that entire thing replaced.
Yep.
And remember that when the lodge was remodeled.
Yep.
The owners were given the option of replacing that, and it was 3,500.
It was cheap, much cheaper than
Yeah,
that.
32 to 3,500 at the
I think
time.
it was around 3,500.
Yeah.
And a lot of owners took that option.
Yeah, but it was only like 34, 35, 36 owners who did it.
What?
I would have been surprised.
Well,
I was surprised that more didn't do it.
well, that's like 25% out of
Yeah.
the lodge. Okay, all right, insurance and maintenance and insurance on our 3 vehicles, the 2 Nissans and the pickup truck. Those are, we pay the insurance up front, so that's why that's a little high, but we'll catch up and equalize. Okay, so personnel expenses. So as I mentioned before, this 601 salaries and the associated costs to burden those up was our primarily our maintenance and ground staff up until May 1st. And of course, last year we budgeted for a staff that we no longer have. I mean, we still have, what, 2 employees? Two maintenance employees, right? That are under our purview that we pay, that report to our staff. Now we added this account 601.1. It says BHP. That's-
Oops.
Oops, yeah. I crossed that out with contract.
Weakness.
Yeah, we probably should have changed that. Anyway, it's supposed to be wages, but we obviously don't pay wages. We pay hourly. We pay hourly fees to Greg's people for the work they perform. And that so far between May and August has totaled up to about $121,000. So that offsets and perhaps exceeds to some degree the salary budget year to date that we put in place for when we just had our own maintenance staff. So I think next year, what we're probably going to do, we'll discuss this at budget, but my recommendation will be that we put this 601 account up in the previous category as a contract fee. And then any owners, any employees that we have that we pay directly, they would be under these salaries because we don't burden up their costs. That's Greg's responsibility. We just pay the hourly rate for each of the guys. But so far, it looks like it's working fairly well. It's a little bit high. I want to see what that does towards the end of the year because as we get into November and December, the costs for that kind of work because of weather will start dropping a little bit. So that may equalize to some degree, and we'll see what it looks like at the end of the year.
I assume that all those other categories benefits, payroll taxes, workers' comp, everything is up to date with all of our employee staffing changes?
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, that's current. Yeah.
Okay, okay, yeah,
So.
great. Yeah, I agree. We need to not necessarily call that wages and move BHP since they're not Taco employees. Yeah,
Jerry?
sorry, I'm looking at the meeting on my phone because for some reason my computer wouldn't log into the Zoom meeting. And so I'm kind of squinting here to read this, but we're good.
So it is the sum of line 601.1 and 601 that should be compared against the year-to-date budget of
Correct.
27.
Yes,
And so that's when you say we're a little bit over.
20,000 high, yeah.
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 okay.
Year to date.
Year to date, it's 20,000.
And do we expect that to continue throughout the rest of the year? It being high?
Well, like I said, I said, as we move into the shoulder season and the fall and the winter, I expect that their hourly billings might drop down some because of less demand.
Sure.
And the weather, doing a lot less outside work.
There's also a lot of things that we've been doing in our in-house that normally you would have to go outside and contract.
Well, there's that too, because if you go back to the previous lines where we were below, like for instance, on grounds, we're lower on grounds, so that offsets this as well.
We also.
So we'll
Got it.
take all of that into consideration when we budget.
Budget maintenance.
Yeah.
We've also found things were not being done that should have been done previously. And they're catching up on that stuff too.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm just help me understand, is that 3 months? I know there was a transition. Is this just June, July, and August, or is this May, June, July, and August?
May, June, July, and August.
So they have 4 months for line.
601.1.
Okay.
That's 4 months worth.
Okay.
Yeah. May, June, July, August. Right. Let's see. Okay, so utilities. Water, our water billing looks like it's low, under budget. It's really not. There's a pretty significant billing lag in our water usage versus when we pay for it. For instance, July is the latest bill we have. We don't have the August bill yet. We won't get it for another week or so. Usually the middle of the month. Yeah. And then we won't even pay that bill for August until sometime in October, early October. So this is really what you're seeing. The 220 is through June. If we added July into that, that would add another 45,000. We spend a lot of money on water in the summertime because of irrigation. So we're going to be high anyway. We expect to be high year to date through August and September. And then when we stop watering in October, that'll even out some. So again, just like I've said before, we'll see where we end up at the end of the year.
I have a question, Joe and Annalisa. I know, I believe that we've been having higher occupancy over the last 2 or 3 years, throughout the summer in particular. Joe, do you know, because I don't get the monthly meter anymore, but is the higher water usage, do you see evidence of higher water usage because of the higher occupancy in the summer compared to?
Incrementally, the big hit in the summer is irrigation. It's large. Yeah. I think incrementally due to occupancy fluctuations. More so irrigation.
As Mark was talking about, one of the things we're wanting to do to offset some of that is some of these beds where we have flowers and plants. We want to go to more of rocks, maybe an ornamental grass and mulch. Take away a lot of the plants and cut down on our watering.
Yeah, the irrigation consumption is very large number.
Huge.
Compared to the residential number. It's huge. It's a huge number.
In some of in the lowest months of the winter, our bill could be $22,000. In the highest month in the summer, July is 45. So it's, you can see where the irrigation water comes in.
Done a lot more irrigation this year than we have in past years. We run the sprinklers a lot more.
We probably have 25% more sprinklers actually working.
That's.
But that doesn't mean the water
I'm saying they're actually
necessarily was being saved. It could have just been running ineffectively. Because there was a lot of those issues, I'm sure.
We have grass
They
in
can
places,
speak to,
we have
so
had grass before.
Okay.
Is our irrigation water potable or non-potable? Moving along.
So the rest of the utilities, satellite TV is low because it's just it's another billing lag, and that'll all catch up. The rest of it's pretty much right on. If you look all the way to the bottom line, our net budget, that's that 92,000 is we're that much ahead of the game so far this year, so we're in real good shape. Capital, these are the projects that we identify when we budget as one-time projects through the year. Lisa and I were talking about this bat mitigation. We seem to be doing that every year, so that's probably gonna be something we're gonna look at moving over into the regular operations budget. If it seems like we're gonna keep doing it year over year.
Make a comment on that. Anthony talked to the guy who did that, and he said that we were probably getting more service than what we actually needed.
Oh.
And we've cut back on that almost half.
Well, we will have spent 18,000 this year, so 3,000 on the budget. So if we can do anything to rein that in for next year, that'll be good. 826, the fire suppression pump. Is that the one up in High Point?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's being worked on. It's gonna get done. And it's gonna,
We might be able to just abolish that altogether, and we're in the process from yesterday evening to present investigating that.
so we may not have to spend that.
Don't
No, I'm not
quote
gonna
me
take-
on it, but yeah.
I won't
it's
go to the bank
possible,
with it.
But we'll
Okay.
keep you posted.
Okay, so we'll know. Will we know that by next month?
Yes.
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, so, all right. If we have to do it, it's gonna be more than what we thought. It's gonna be close to 30,000. So hopefully we won't have to do that. The signage, this is those two stone faced signs, one at the entrance to the property and the other one at the junction of Tamaron Drive and Glacier Club Drive that points to High Point. We agreed with Glacier last year to split the $25,000 cost of those two signs, those two lit signs. People be able to move around the property, know where they're going. So that's all done. The Lodge plumbing replacement project was brainchild of a former maintenance manager. We were pursuing that up until early this year when we decided due to the total cost over the next 10 years or so to scrap that project and just deal with our drain plumbing issues as they come up. So there's money, there's a large pot of money that we're not going to spend this year. Let's see. High Point Landscape Project is done. Spent a little more than we had planned. But I think we didn't realize when we budgeted what that was going to entail. So again, we're not doing that plumbing replacement project. So with puts and takes, we're going to be okay. This Crackville, High Point, Gamble Oak and Lodge. This was another approach to parking lot maintenance that we decided to change gears on. We're going to do a major project in Pinecone this fall. It's going to cost $42,000. And then we're going to do crack filling in the lodge and then get back on our cycle of doing one parking lot, resealing and crack filling. The guys have gotten in touch with, is it Leader Construction? Yeah, This is a pavement company that tells us that not true what we thought or what we heard, that maybe our parking lots were running to the end of their useful life. If we maintain them right and do the right things, one of which is the job we're going to do in Pinecone this fall, is they'll last many, many, many more years.
Yeah, what, I believe we had a couple of estimates. We're talking between 250, 400,000. And Bobby knew, this guy from Leader came in and said, no, we have a process that we can do for 40,000 that will give you 25 years as opposed to 30 years for 1/4 the cost. And we said, we'll do that.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
Yeah. We talked earlier about fire mitigation. That's what this defensible space 837, this was, basically that was cutting back fast fuels close to the buildings and getting us in better shape for the fire season this year. Unplanned capital expenses, we've been budgeting this 25,000 for about the last 4 or 5 years. And every year we've found a way to spend it. Apparently this year we haven't. So we've done a few things in here that are a little over budget. You could potentially call the project we're doing in the lodge, and I mean in Pinecone parking lot, you could potentially call that an unplanned capital expense, but it's being absorbed in other places. So I think we want to continue to budget this because you don't know what you don't know. And so anyway, we're well ahead of plan on these capital projects. Here, go down to the bottom line there, 115,000. We're going to spend some of that, but I think we're still going to be ahead of plan, better than planned when we get to the end of the year.
I want to say one thing about the defensible spaces. There is nothing we can do that will lower our insurance premiums. We're at the very bottom for our insurance premiums. So anything we do as far as defensible spaces, we're just trying to improve and do mitigation ourselves.
Not only can we lower our insurance costs, they are going.
Yeah.
And they're going up significantly this year.
Yeah, there'll be
For
a
a lot of reasons.
presentation
We'll be talking about that
tomorrow. Yeah, there'll be the budget meeting, and then also Jennifer Wade's going to give a
Is she
presentation.
coming in?
She is.
Okay, good. All right.
Tomorrow, and we'll talk about that. The biggest change is we went from a straight $10,000 deductible to it's now 10,000 per building. So with 33 buildings, our exposure goes from 10,000 to 330,000. But she'll be talking about all that tomorrow, and it's a function of same as the mortgage, the industry is changing. Insurance companies are wanting to move away from insuring these types of properties. But we are also exploring other companies. We don't expect that we'll get better rates, but we're still doing our due diligence to check it out.
The vibe we're getting is that there's a lot of changes.
I can tell you that we own some timeshares in Sierras in California, Lake Donald. Many insurance companies who have previously provided the insurance will no longer provide the insurance, and those that do jacked up the rates.
Basically,
Companies I've called have said, no,
Nope,
sorry.
no
not
thanks.
interested."
and we ran into this.
Gates got someone too that said nothing.
Yeah, we ran into this a long time ago when the last time we went through the process of shopping our rates, and we found a lot of companies just don't want to insure multifamily buildings, and they definitely don't want to insure multifamily buildings
In a national forest.
with all that out there. Yeah, in an area that's susceptible to fire. So I guess we're we've probably gonna, at the bottom, at the end of the day, we're probably gonna consider ourselves lucky that American Family still wants to insure us.
And Jennifer did also mention there were one or two areas where they were still waiving premiums on those small items to retain our business.
Our effective deductibles are going to go up. When I say effective, we're still gonna have a $10,000 deductible, but it's not per occurrence.
Yeah,
It's
so,
per occurrence per building.
so let's keep working on those defensible spaces.
Yeah.
Yes. And then there's the matter of the wind and hail deductible. We get to pay extra because Denver and Fort Collins and Boulder get baseball sized hail. We don't, but we get to pay for that. All right, go to the next page, guy.
That's
Yeah, we're there.
permanent
Oh, you are
reserve.
there. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I mentioned just one thing on this one. This is just a look at where we are with our permanent reserves, put some takes on that during the course of the year. We take money out of reserves, we put it back, like Scott mentioned, when we do our capital projects, we allocate enough money to, so that our contributions to reserves are inflated somewhat on paper, even though we go ahead and then spend that throughout the year, but it works. It helps us be in compliance with the lenders. I said I would mention why the bank balance on the balance sheet of 783,000 doesn't match up with the bottom line that you see there on in the lower left number. The reason for that is the two figures above 441, which is unit rental revenue, which is the money we get for renting units 110 and 114. Yeah. And then our capital contributions from sales. This is the new deal that went into effect in June of this year, where we now require that new owners make a one-time contribution to our reserves when they buy. So that's the amount that we've collected so far this year. And then the rental, those two numbers are not yet in the bank. They're showing here, they will be deposited in the bank at some point between now and the end of the year, but they're not there
So,
yet.
and what we budgeted last year, at that time, we didn't have that in place yet, so that's why there was nothing in the budget.
That's right. That was a new thing that I think we got that. So both by the owners in spring, right? Next year spring. It went into effect in June. The last page is the service and security desk. We budget this separately so we can keep track of what it costs us to operate that front, the service and security desk. About 150,000 a year budget. At this moment, all of the revenues related to rental, the fees we get from rentals are down. I don't know if that's more based on more from occupancy or the fact that we're just not getting as big a cut of that because Glacier keeps raising their share of the resort fee. This is something we'll probably have to take a look at again when we budget. The costs are what they are. So behind, this is the one, scroll down to the bottom here. This is the one budget that we're a fair amount behind on. See how it works out towards the end of the year. And I think we'll have to budget the revenue streams accordingly next year when we do that. And that's it. Any questions from the board? Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, so I've noticed in my rental units that I have around the country that everything's off.
The what?
Everything is off.
Everything is off?
People are feeling the pinch of inflation and not spending money. Are you seeing that, Lisa, in our numbers?
Yeah. Just hasn't felt
Yeah,
as
last year was
busy.
bad.
I mean, I Paige could speak to that better.
It hasn't been near as busy as we thought it would be this year. We thought that it would be as busy as it was last year. It hasn't been. We
Hasn't
noticed it at this, on this budget. at the front desk. budgeted for, I mean, we're half. The. We aren't getting there as much revenue. So, yeah, we're noticing.
Scroll back up, Gary, to the top of that. Where the headers are. And
Go ahead.
look at 460, all admin fees. That's the, what do we charge? Is it $30?
$30 a night, we get $3.
We only get $3 of that. The rest of it goes to Glacier for the resort fees, so renters can use the pool and fitness area. So that's like half a budget,
It is. Glacier's going to raise their fees again this year.
and they're gonna raise their fees again this year.
3%, and so that just cuts out of the, our fee that we get from the front desk.
I'm not sure why the contribution from rental units is down, because that's the fee that we charge any owner who has their unit in the rental program.
Well,
And as a rental.
The long-term rental fee, is that what you're talking about?
No, 473.
Oh, okay.
That's the fee we charge. We charge a monthly fee on each
Yeah.
unit that is rented,
Right.
short term. The long-term rental fees are for long-term. So that's down below budget too. So we're just gonna have to look at the numbers.
there's not as many people renting their units.
Perhaps
The
not.
new sales, or you talked about.
How many short-term rental units are there?
That is a moving target now, much more so than it was in
Approximately.
past years.
I can see.
Short-term
how many
rentals,
I build.
about 120.
That's
If-
pretty much
but-
where it's been, hasn't it?
But the difference is, and I ask new owners this all the time, if they're gonna be renting it out or they're gonna be using it, and far more so now than any other time, half and half. I'm gonna rent it out when I'm not using it, and then I'm gonna be here for 4 months. And it's very hard to categorize, and I just emailed this to Julie Blinn, because she's gonna be using these numbers tomorrow. It's very hard to categorize a lot of the units these days as private, full-time, long-term rentals is pretty obvious, but short-term rentals and private, they're really hard to nail down these days. There's probably a very broad swath of units that could be categorized either way.
It's not near as many long-term.
No.
I knew that was going down.
Yeah.
I knew that was going down. Yeah.
And this all just
Did
happened.
now, when an owner has their unit as a rental, designated as a rental, I'm gonna try not to use the term rental program anymore. We don't wanna add those. When they designate it as a rental, and when it's being rented, we charge it, what's that monthly fee now? Is it
Sorry.
35? Is it $35 a month? Or is it
The monthly fee is 35 for the, to
Short-term
be in the
rentals.
short-term procurement program.
35?
35.
Is it 35?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So-
so we
so-
have.
So when we,
billed 116 owners in September.
okay, so here's my question. If an owner is, say they're renting their unit in January, February, March, April, and they say, I'm coming in May and I'm staying for 4 months, do we stop charging them the $35?
Yeah.
Okay, so that, we need to factor that in when we do the budgeting for that number too. Okay.
Okay, Eric.
I'm sorry, I had problems finding my mute button. Is that administratively burdensome to, because we rent, but for example, in 2020, we were there for 5 months working remotely, but we didn't turn off our fee just because I figure our condo is listed as one that's in the short-term rental program. And is that administratively burdensome to have people be able to turn on and off that fee with you? I just thought either you were or you weren't, but
Yeah.
It is, but that's what we want. We don't want you paying for something that you're not. Right?
okay.
Not doing, but,
I-
right, so-
Yeah.
Yeah,
I-
yeah.
I remember.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious.
So we don't-
That's, Do you have anybody who chases you after the fact for that? Like, oh, I was there.
I send a bill and
Yeah.
they'll just call me and say, hey, I actually am not renting this fall at all, or, you know.
I think
Okay,
something we just have to deal with.
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, we had to get, for Stacy, we had to get creative in the last couple of years on how we would fund this front desk operation or this service and security desk operation if we want to keep it in place, and I think we do. So $150,000 a year because, and that's mostly employee costs.
Right.
The guys and gals that sit on the front desk and, you know, watch the alarms and cut keys for you, and basically they're there if something goes wrong and they have nobody else to go to, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the case now because we don't have nighttime maintenance anymore. We have on call. So they've got to go, who do I call? You know, that's where they're going to find out who to call, right? So we really need to have that. And we've had to get creative on how to fund it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think I fully support the fee. I just, it just seems so burdensome to have people say, I'm not renting for 2 months. Can you not charge me my $35 for 2 months and then start it again this month? And it's just too bad we can't just leave it on every quarter. If you participate in short-term rentals at all during the year, then you're being billed this much. But if it's not a problem for Elisa and Paige, then I was just curious how it worked.
Eric, did you have a question?
Just a comment, where we talked about our resources. As a landlord, as an owner of 2 properties here, I think most of us realize that the nationwide housing price started to decline in July. We've reached the peak and exceeded it. Scott's left the room, but mortgage rates today are the highest rate they've been in 14 years. We're sitting on a wasting asset here if we continue to hold these 2 units at a point that
Yeah, if we were gonna sell them, we should have sold them 3 months ago.
February would have been a great month,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
can't do February.
both
but-
of those 2 units combined are probably worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $450,000.
Yeah.
And that's money that we could spend, put it in reserves, we could do a lot of things.
And you see forecasts today of housing prices dropping through 2024, housing prices dropping anywhere from 10 to 25%.
Yep.
That's $100,000 saying bye-bye, that could be in our pocket.
It
I
is.
think the board needs to,
I think this is something that should be discussed at the budget meeting.
I'm ready for a break.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a break until 12:10. We only have about 3 items left, and I don't anticipate a bunch of discussion, however, we may have some, but we'll start back up about 12:10.
We always have discussion.
But Gary and I both track the real estate sales.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing is that more 3 or 4 months ago, every unit was selling above list price. Now, it's maybe half of them are selling or more are selling below list price.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
necessarily look at that figure, but I look at the price per square foot, and that's staying high.
It's staying high, it's not dropping,
It's not dropping.
but yeah.
Yeah. For the 12-month average, it's still, if I've got this correct, it's still, sales are 101% of ask price
Now,
for the past 12 months.
but there's so
But
far
it
this,
is trending down.
but there's a lot less volume this year. What was it? Last year, we had 18 million in sales.
Yeah, 17 something.
We're only at 8 right now.
Right, I know.
So I don't think we're gonna hit last year's sales volume.
No, and the number of sales, I think, has decreased.
The number, the raw number and the dollar figure.
Right.
Everywhere but High Point is still going up. High Point is not because there have not been the listings. Everything in High Point sold last year and early this year. So there just haven't been the listings. There've been,
I think there's one active.
yeah, and the one that we have a contract on the end was way overpriced, and that's why it sat on the market for almost a year, because it was excessively overpriced.
Actually, there's two active High Point listings.
Just one of them is not
There's
getting full
574 and 602.
Yeah, apparently one of those is not going through. We can't get finance.
Well, that's active. That's not on the 615. 615 is a sales pending. Is that the one that didn't
That
go
was,
through?
I think so. It's owned by LLC. And they can't get the funding. That's what I heard yesterday.
She said she does also have 6 pocket listings.
But if you look at these, active on market and you look at the price per square foot of the list price, every one of them is over what the actual average is. So people are still trying to get big money. And that's why the days on market are going up.
You know, I had heard that 602
Could have
they got full price.
offer.
So I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Go ahead and pick back up. The next thing, unfinished business, I'd mentioned this last time. And I wanted to revisit it. Our charge.
Property report.
You guys have something?
You gonna,
Okay.
you got something?
Okay, well then we'll go ahead and do that.
So we're gonna do the property report, so.
Sure they can hear you.
Yeah, you might want to
Come up over
Come up
here.
closer.
raise the volume, however whatever it takes.
I pull up on my phone so I can. Sitting close to you. Pulling up on my phone.
She was gonna read
okay.
the property.
I was gonna read the property.
Oh, okay.
All right, chime in, you guys want to. Okay.
Or
So,
harmony.
so these are some of the things that are gonna happen this fall. Ongoing exterior maintenance. These are including the completion of the stucco painting in Gamble Oak and High Point, touching up and applying the stain and sealer in areas that need attention in Gamble Oak, High Point, and Pinecone. Seal coat in the parking lot in Pinecone, crack sealing in the lodge, as well as some minor repairs in Gamble Oak. We're gonna start fall preventative maintenance, including winterization of the irrigation systems, checking out the heat trace systems, and installing indicator lights and updating the freeze prevention systems in the riser closets. That's something that I think they're gonna start on pretty quickly. Working on solutions to mitigate and prevent the icicle problems at the lodge out here. They get pretty big around here. They get pretty big and dangerous. This includes heating the edge of the roof and installing a heated gutter system. This would eliminate the danger of the huge icicles falling and being a hazard. They're also in the process of getting together bids for re-roofing the lodge, which we've talked to a few of you about, I believe. They're constantly working on the cast iron problem or the replacement in all areas of the property, as the cast iron has passed its useful lifespan and is failing everywhere on property. While owners bear much of the cost of these units, Taco has also has a lot of financial responsibility as we upgrade when problems surface in common walls and under the units. This issue is getting progressively worse as time goes by. We're also working on cleaning up the smoke alarm system as well as wiring for the system all around the property. We have discovered some issues in the fire suppression system and working on getting everything corrected. And then another big thing that I think is pretty cool. They're working on getting Ryan certified. Ryan Sherman, who is on the landscaping committee that you guys are familiar with, certified to test our backflow prevention valves. This will be a big savings for Taco, as these valves have to be tested every year. Cost to contract this out will be $200 and $250 per valve, and there's 37 valves. That's a big thing that they're working on doing. And we have a lead on a highly certified IT person since Cody's no longer with us, to take care of all the Tamron systems. His name is John, and his qualifications are low voltage. He has a low voltage certification in Colorado and North Dakota. ISS automation certification, over 4 years of hours logged on low voltage and automation services, and electrical apprenticeship certification through CDOT for Colorado Safety Control Systems, and certification through OSHA. So that's pretty cool as well.
What about computer literacy?
He's very computer literate.
Does he have traditional IT skills like taking care of computers?
Yeah, he does. He does.
Systems
Because we talked about, I think I talked about this with Elisa and maybe Gary, but what we might want to be looking for, since we have, right now, we have a contract with Norm Pope. If we got an IT person who was low voltage certified, could do the alarms, could do the temperature monitoring systems, all that, and take care of the HOA's computers,
Right,
we can eliminate having that other contract.
right. I strongly agree with that.
Where's this guy coming from?
Ringo from Lorenzo.
So he's local.
Yes, yes.
Where's he working now?
He's working, so he did work on oil sites, but right now he's working with Carina, one of the cleaning companies. Just for the time being, he doesn't have a low voltage job.
Is he agreed?
I don't think it's free. Agreed?
No.
No.
Not agreed. So figure out what you might want to pay him, you take that into consideration.
Yes.
Right now, the going rate for a degreed IT specialist average is about 65,000. Oh, we need to talk about that. You, at least 2 board members that I know of would prefer this person to be a Taco employee. So I think that needs to be discussed before any action is taken.
Yeah, Joe, I just point out anybody with an IT background would have access to employee records. Want to go there?
I got it. It's been somewhat thought through already. Yeah.
Any other questions about company report?
Hey, Joseph, when you're doing the exterior, that's great, but I don't think you mentioned replacing any boards. I see some pretty serious cracking going on. It's just a few boards.
Right.
But what's the thought about the, I mean, not necessarily this fall, but
right,
what are we gonna do about dealing with some of these cracked boards?
We can
So
just replace them as that lead guys. When we find, you show us the ones that you're talking about. Make sure they get replaced.
Okay.
and we did walk through a walkthrough as well on the property. All of us went, and so we did see a lot and noted a lot.
Yeah.
Like you said, we can replace them as we need to.
They don't like impact from golf balls.
Right.
The ball usually loses.
Stop hitting your own unit then, Eric.
I
Good
also
grief.
noted visiting friends, not us, where we said that the north facing, so the boards on the north facing seem to get more rock. They do.
I had a couple of questions, sorry. You made a pretty extreme comment about the cast iron fixtures failing all over the property. Can you quantify that? How often are we getting a cast iron failure that needs repair?
About 2 to 3 times a week.
2 to 3 times a week.
And is it in specific location? Is it more in the lodge or is it spread out?
It's pretty much everywhere. But the outlying units. In the most bigger jobs, because lodge, it's in one unit, basically, and get 1 or 2 units to fix it. Just what John Stacy's. I put right now. So, you know, when you have to go for the taco portion, you're going ahead and listen that until we get outside the runs in the main line. Because that up is all faded, it leaks in the winter time, freezes, it's amazing.
the gutter system, I know I've talked about this with Anthony. That would be done when the roof is redone. Would it not? Or would it be done beforehand? And would it then survive a roof replacement?
If we can possibly do the front edge, which will be. And we can do that with the existing roof on there. Put the gutter system on, then. if we can get the prices together and get the order, I'd like to do that this fall.
What, do you have an order of magnitude number on that? Throw me a number.
We're still waiting to.
Hey,
I've been working on that just about every day, blowing this last one, and, you know, I am religiously checking the else, but I can get you to this.
Well, what I'm thinking of, I mean, we saw, we went over the capital stuff. We got some room in the capital budget this year. If it fits in there, then I could see doing it this year. If you're, as you say, it would survive a roof replacement without.
We could make sure it's surviving.
Okay, so. Let's know.
It just seems like you're getting rid of that mess we had here.
Okay, well, let's move on to unfinished business, the oversized parking for owners, residents. This was something that was put into place under our previous maintenance manager, and I don't think it's right. I think we also could be getting into some potential issues if someone were to challenge it. So I think we need to do away with, for these oversized parking spaces, just formally, we haven't been doing it, but formally getting rid of the language that goes with saying we would charge owners for use of those oversized spaces.
But the owners would still need to reserve the space,
Yes,
but just it wouldn't be charged.
right.
So you're just gonna make it a first come, first served
Yes,
benefit
yes.
to owners? What about renters?
That would be what we could discuss if we want to continue charging renters. But I don't think charging owners for the use of their own space is appropriate.
Charging for the reservation, not for space. It guarantees them access.
Yeah.
But you're gonna do away with that. You're gonna make owners on them, so they could, parking lot can be full of renters before the owner shows up.
You know, we charge owners for storage space. What's the difference? That's their property too.
Hey, Rick, what is our point of failure on this? Since I've come on board, I know that we have a reservation system for the limited number of spaces that there are, but you sound like this is not working, and where is it going south?
Yeah.
I think it's working, but the owners don't necessarily, some of them are fine paying, but others are not wanting to pay. But having at least having the space, because we were stuck 2 years ago with nowhere to put these vehicles.
If you guys are fine with the status quo, then we can just drop it.
I don't get a vote. I'm not on the board. I think it's a good program. I mean,
I think you have more control
yeah.
of it that way. I mean, I agree, we pay a lot of money in our assessments and that type of thing, but I think it's gonna be very difficult if you have somebody that's not paying and somebody that is paying, just to try to balance. I think the process, if it's working right now, you leave it and we readdress it later.
Do we have people who are parking elsewhere because they have no place for their large vehicles and that's creating a problem? Or is it mostly just complaints of owners that they have to participate in the reservation system?
Hadn't really been, I'm having heard complaints.
So so Paige took the class that Joe took. And you got some information. Go ahead and stand up.
And John may be able to speak on this as well, because you know all about the rules. And what I learned in that course was that you are not, a CHOA, you're not allowed to charge owners for something that they already own. So they already own the parking lot, to my understanding. They already own something, so if they already own the parking lot, you cannot charge them to use it. And that was in that course.
Probably need to get a legal opinion on that. Because if that extends to the storage units, that's gonna blow that all to hell.
So there's parking lots too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go
I mean,
claim my
there's
own
no
space.
difference.
Yeah,
It's all
there's no-
common property.
That would be my view, is it's all common property. Otherwise, I'm gonna go paint some lights and say that's my parking space.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you're not allowed to charge for the oversized parking, the owner for the oversized parking. That makes sense.
So are you also saying that we can't charge for the storage units?
If it's common property,
That could be.
that could be.
I think that's gotta be looked at.
It's just something that I learned that I want to bring.
Then
Because
we
the
know what
parking
money
lot
we
is
got.
not a good moneymaker, but the storage units are.
Yeah.
Storage units are a little bit different too, because we made improvements to facilitate that.
Well, we did it with the parking lot.
Yeah.
We created the striped spaces, we put up the signs.
Signs.
Yeah. I don't, I don't see
But we don't enforce anything. I know. I'm muted when I tried to speak.
I can hear you.
Oh, this is Wayne Alexander. May I interject here a bit? Add to
Go
the
ahead.
conversation?
Go ahead.
From an owner's perspective here, the whole program is not being managed properly, okay? So some vehicles have tags on them, some do not. You know, if I'm sitting on the board and I'm looking at where revenues are coming in, or a program is not viable as, let's say, the space rentals that Joe's referencing, that program is viable because it's being enforced and it's being marketed and it's being used, and it's you know, my question is, have we ever towed anybody out of a space because they weren't supposed to be there? Have we ever collected any money? You know, we can go walk through the parking lots right now and I can show you vehicles parked there that don't have yellow tags on them, that aren't allocated to that program, and we're just not managing it. So in that sense, I agree with Rick Hughes. If we're not going to manage it, then let's do away with it. I had a question at the time that this was done, that the board passed the rule and allocated space, took space that belonged to owners and allocated it to parking and charging for parking. And that was mentioned at the time, but yet we went through with it. We voted for it. We passed it. We got it done, yet it just does not get managed. And that's the problem.
And owners shouldn't have to pay for a 48-hour.
Yeah, and owners should not have to pay for a 48-hour unloading and loading their RV, which was kind of the genesis of how this rule came about.
They don't. They are not, owners are not charged for 48 hours for loading and unloading an RV in front of their unit.
Well, they're not now, but it was in a policy that Gary put out that they were gonna do it, and
No,
Never was.
What about contractors?
well, we were
Do they
told by the
pay?
front desk we had to pay $10 to use the space. So whether you believe that or not, that's what we've been told.
You're told that you were told at the time that you had to pay $10 for the oversized space.
Exactly.
You could park in front of your unit,
Exactly.
right in front of your unit for 48 hours and you were not charged.
So we
It-
can't use the oversized.
But we
space?
can't use the oversized spaces that were allocated for that purpose. And so then we get people renting up here and people walking in and saying, hey, why are you parked in the parking spots? Why aren't you parked over there in that oversized space that's empty? And we said, well, because we got to pay for it.
Okay, we're venturing into a discussion that's not appropriate for this forum. If you want to speak to board members individually about that, we'll be happy to listen to it, but I think we're kind of getting off now.
I'm
Eric,
just gonna try and add some historical perspective. As I remember this issue, the problem was all of those folks wanted to park in the lodge parking lot. So we decided to distribute the pain across the entire property. So that the original issue was to limit the number of extra large vehicles parking in the lodge parking lot because we didn't have space.
yeah,
That's what drove the process. It wasn't to raise money. It wasn't to penalize anybody. It was to make sure we had enough parking space for mostly short-term renters wanting to stay in the lodge. And they were bringing their trailers and their oversized vehicles here, more trailers, frankly, than oversized vehicles.
and at this point, it's something that we'll need to consult with the attorneys on, check with Christina about what we need to do going forward. So in that at this point. The first thing I had under new business was BHP retention. We will table that until the next meeting. So the last thing that we really have here is John wanted to talk about the board election process and the candidate academy.
Yeah, just a real quick note. As most of you know, we did a board academy, a board candidate academy that was on 4 consecutive Thursday evenings in July. And there are participants in the room that, or there are people in the room that participated. I put out an evaluation form, a survey form, asking for feedback from the participants, and received feedback, and it was generally positive. And seems to me that unless the board thinks that it's not a good idea to do it again, that that's probably worth doing. I think I might adjust the timing a little bit and move it earlier in the year. Because maybe somebody would like to go through that process before they decide to be a candidate rather than after they have decided to be a candidate. So it's just a timing issue. Excuse me. So I don't think it needs board action, but I just thought I would mention that there were some voluntary suggestions for improvements, and certainly going to take those in consideration. But overall, it seemed like people were felt that it was worth doing.
I personally thought it was some great information for people. I learned a lot of stuff in it. So
Yeah,
people who might be interested in running for the board, I thought it would be an excellent tool for them.
Yeah.
So what about this, John? Just throw this out there. If you put out the material, or you make the material available to anybody who's considering running for the board,
right?
Then with it, you don't have to necessarily run panels and have questions and answers like that, but just encourage anybody who's considering running for the board to review the material that you've already assembled.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a live course. I mean, it could just be a written material. I think there's some value though in having a interpersonal communication. So I think my next view is, and thank you for that suggestion. I've just been thinking about moving it more to April and putting out the word and then letting people who think they might run for the board go through that process and then maybe make a more informed decision about whether running for and serving on the board is something they'd really want to do.
John, how about filming it also and posting it on the taco site?
I think it was recorded, was it
I
not?
think it was, yeah. it was recorded.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's available. You know, I guess certainly as if somebody wanted to go back and look, I don't see any reason they shouldn't, but I guess my feeling is that the live nature of it has some value. You know, I'm an old teacher and during my time as a teacher, we went from totally face-to-face to, for a while, totally online and with no live interaction with students. And I gotta tell you, and I'm not saying that online education, I mean, well, obviously it works because there are millions of people doing it. But I always just felt that the personal interaction does enrich the experience. And as a teacher, at least, I missed it when I didn't have a live interaction with students.
And every adult learner is different. That's what you have to take.
Well, it was reported this week that for the first time ever, the US math and reading scores dropped.
Over the last 2 years, COVID related, there's no secret to the fact that our kids who were juniors and seniors in high school during that time frame, and the rest of them lost a lot.
But I have teachers in the family, and so there are still family members out there active in the classroom, and they and the students, these are younger students in this case, high school, but they and the students just feel that the existence of a cohort, regular meetings, there's an accountability that's built right into that and this doesn't have to do with our course, but in general, it does seem that having the fellow students in the room, so to speak, or a live interaction with a teacher or discussion leader, what do you want to call it, tends to enrich the experience. And so, you know, call me old fashioned, but I would prefer to have something live. Certainly, if somebody would prefer to simply receive the written materials, that would be fine too. They could be made available. But I do think that the written material was good and it did help prepare people to come in and discuss. But I think ideas were developed in the live sessions that might not have been if people were just at home reading.
Well, I certainly agree with you, John, that it should be moved up earlier.
Yeah.
So that people can learn about that before they decide to run for the board.
That, not to be the wet blanket on this, but I think the one disappointment, I think you and I talked about this, was the one meeting where it was going to be meet the candidates, where people could, you know, question the candidates on their feelings about Tamron. Especially after last year, when we only had that the day before the meeting. It was very low participation. Right?
Gary's,
and
that's fine because
it's jumping into a different subject,
No,
but related.
No, absolutely related. But he's making the point that we had a meet the candidate session, and the year before we were criticized that we had it so late that everybody had already voted. So what was that? So we moved it to earlier in the time so people, and yet we had, to be honest, quite a disappointing turnout.
Yeah, if you take away former board members and spouses, we had 6 people. So that, you know, our feeling for that was it's not worth our time if we're only gonna have 6 people.
I think that 6 people, I look at that differently. I think 6 people to be people that are looking to be on a board, I looked at it as a positive number.
Well,
I
it
was
wasn't,
like,
no,
No,
those
no,
were,
we've
it
moved
wasn't
on. We're
people
sorry,
to
Kathy.
be on board. It was just.
Meet the
six
candidate. It was a
people
meet the
Oh,
candidate.
oh, okay, sorry.
Listening.
And we just didn't get a
listening to
lot
what
of
the
interest.
candidates had to
Okay,
say.
I misunderstood.
And that's actually part of the board election process, part of that. I started in on the candidate academy, so I
Okay.
apologize for,
Yeah.
for getting things out of order. But I think Rick makes a good point that you do have to ask yourself, if you go to the, take the time and energy to invite all owners to a meet the candidate forum, and basically you have such a poor turnout, it does, you have to ask yourself the question, why are we making this effort for a very, very low?
6 out of 300.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, that's all.
I think the academy has a lot of merit. It's a very good tool for people who would choose to avail themselves. So,
I'm glad, John, that you had written material prepared.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought the written material was fairly succinct and hit on some very important points. And again, there are other people in the room who were very, very helpful in putting together that set of materials.
yeah, a big thank you to Joe and Eric and Jerry and John. All 4 of them did a tremendous amount of work putting that together. And it's a very good tool.
Is that, is all of that information, the printed information that you compiled from those of us that contributed, is that in a single document that could be posted on the website?
Well, yeah, all of the unit, there were 4.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. I know, there's a lot there.
There's a lot there. And
It's almost like a Tamaron textbook.
it is almost, yeah. And I still have original materials. I did do some editing, just to make everything consistent and not repetitive. So,
I just wouldn't want all of that to get
no,
lost somewhere.
well, that's a good point. That it exists on my computer, so that needs to be put in a Tamaron file.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good suggestion.
Any other comments, concerns from the board on that subject? No, on anything.
On anything. I wanted to ask you a question. So water and sewer, is it on your radar, Jerry, that by October 1st, the UCWC has to come forward with any proposed rate increases?
Oh, yeah, it's been crawling from the back of my head to the front of my head over the last couple of weeks.
We want to know that
I
because
will
if they
make
don't
it-
produce it by October 1st, they can't raise the rates on it. That's the way I read that document.
That's my understanding as well. I will put out an email to the advisory board and to Jim Goodman.
Yeah.
We are expecting that. And we're going to be there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's a hard date in the documents.
Yeah, it is.
If I could, I wanted to circle back. I know we've kind of put the VHP retention item on hold, but I think it would be appropriate to, I would think, Joe, Joe's got a lot of time on his hands. He needs more work. So, but I wonder if Joe and Elisa in the next couple of weeks, before the November, but if you two could get together to put in, down on paper what it is we have and know. And then also, I think we need to involve Greg particularly on making sure that by, excuse me, by that November meeting, that we have we've got a concrete, we can look forward. We would know what we were perhaps going to ask you to do on into the future.
John should have been in our meetings the last couple of days, right?
Okay.
We're covered. We got
Okay.
it.
Well,
It's gonna start next week. I mean, yeah.
great.
I'm still, the budgeting process is gonna start a little early.
Right.
Because I'm going on a trip and I'm gonna be gone for 2.5
Okay,
weeks between now and then. So I want things in place before I.
Right, and I just think the board needs to have a concrete idea. Let's just say for the sake of argument that there were a contract that started on January 1st and ran a year or something, like, whatever that might be. That when we meet in November to take a look at having a budget for 2023, that aspect of the budget, which is significant, that aspect of the budget is something in black and white, so to speak.
And I'd like to add that, and I'm sure that Joe and Anthony and Elisa will talk about this, but I've heard reference to their finding a backlog of unfinished maintenance requests that have been sitting out there for a while, whether it's landscaping related or internal maintenance related, that they discovered, took care of this backlog. And so I think if we just took their costs to date and divided by the number of months, we might have an inflated number because of that backlog. So, and maybe only Anthony and Greg can speak to that, but I'm curious how much of their work was old work and how much of their work was tickets that have been submitted since they started. Just thinking in terms of budget. I mean, I know we don't have a crystal ball. Who knows what maintenance requests are coming in, but if they did have what I've heard is a large backlog, then that might be worth considering when we budget for next year.
For clarification on that, when I started up and looking at the fix system, I had work orders going back 10 to 12 months that were unanswered. I had emails dating back an entire year that went unanswered. So I don't have the actual number of work orders, but yeah, we're going back, a solid 10 months up to 12 work requests that were just ignored.
Right. That's what I was thinking about. And hi, Anthony. I can't see you from my view, but hello, I didn't know you were in the room. And so, but that's what I was thinking about is if we include that backlog in projections, there's a chance our budget could be inflated. I mean, maybe that's not a bad thing. It's a cushion. It's just building in a cushion. But I did want to remind everybody of that.
And that's a good point. Eric, I think you had something.
I just wanted to reiterate, Rick, the concept of adding to the new purchase inspection report clause provision that by the inspector, even if it just says, I have not looked at all of the new additions, something that flags for every owner in the report that they pay for about what new requirements of what it's not clause 15, whatever that is, that says only the original equipment, only the original construction is covered by Taco responsibility. This gotcha. I mean, I agree with you, Joe. Nobody reads them, but it says clearly it's a responsibility of the new owner to find those things. I don't think Taco should be in the business of warranting that. We can provide a spreadsheet, but it's up to the inspector to check the spreadsheet and verify what's on the spreadsheet. And then every owner has somebody who has been on site, looked at these things from their perspective, from the outlook of the new buyer. And then hopefully some of these surprises don't happen.
These home inspectors, how are they to know what's original and what's not? The other, two-part question. The other question is, not all sales involve an inspector. I sold a unit 3 years ago, and the deal we made with the buyer was they didn't have an inspection, and that's on the table.
But then that's the buyer's responsibility. At least the board will have done one thing to protect the new buyer. If the new buyer chooses to ignore that, that's their choice. So just like, I mean, the furnace is gonna fail the day after you did your sale. You know, that's the new
That's-
buyer's responsibility.
That's tough luck.
They chose that path. That's not the typical path.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Are you gonna go into executive session?
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ron votes yes also.
Yeah, easy for him to vote.
Yeah. Okay, we're adjourned.
I got a response.